Hey everyone, welcome back to the room. No, not the weird, crazy movie that was like the worst movie of all time, but also, I mean, interesting because it's so bad. And then they made another movie off of it called The Disaster Artist, which was really, really interesting. Regardless. Oh, hi, Mark. Yeah, this is a weird intro, but it's also a weird space that I'm recording in again. And there are some really weird cards that have come out over the weekend, and some especially weird ones this morning that have me saying, like, Wizards, what are you doing? What is going on? So all that said, let's jump into it. First up, we've got Forensic Engineer. Now, this card is one where it's like, okay, this it has absurd amounts of potential. I guess I would say had, because, yeah, this, if it was budget friendly, would definitely be in my Joyra deck, but we don't talk about the Joyra deck anymore, okay? A 2/3 Vidalcan Artificer Detective, because that's the thing that costs 2 and a blue. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate. So again, make a clue. On top of that, activate abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 less to activate. Can't reduce that mana cost less than 1 mana, because Wizards doesn't like easy infinite things, except for when it comes to their Gruul commanders, apparently. Make sure you check out my recent episode on the Mole God. My goodness. Yeah, this is a crazy effect. This is a crazy good card. When it comes to the most broken things in Magic, typically the answer equals artifacts all the time, because artifacts are something that can be easily used and abused. Again, although this reduces, this shows how reduction can be limited when you have, certain cards that maybe like limit, like Ethereum Sculptor, or, limit, that limit the amount of mana you're spending on artifacts, or even make it to its 0. You're reducing that cost down. You can cast artifact after artifact or artifact, sometimes infinitely, sometimes quite easily, or just cast an artifact, which is 0, and you get free value out of that. You get a clue, which normally isn't the best thing. Like, if you're gonna like rate all like the different cards, the different tokens, you're like, okay, treasures are probably the top of the list when it comes to artifact tokens. Then, yeah, maybe clues, I guess. I'm not counting creature tokens in here, okay? And then, like, blood or food, depending on the situation, like gaining life, not all that good. But when you can reduce the cost of activation of a clue down to just 1, and it's 1 mana draw a card, that's crazy. That's a lot of value. Again, this is a low-to-the-ground creature that's like, okay, cool, I'll give you an absurd amount of clues, which can benefit you in many other ways. And actually, we'll talk about a commander that helps in a little bit as well, and we'll talk about ways that you can utilize those clues. And then also, yeah, okay, just pay 1 mana whenever you want, draw a card. That's pretty crazy, pretty effective. Again, obviously this can work with other things as well. This could work with food. Obviously, not really in food's colors typically, but it could work with food, making it only cost 1 to activate those. Also, if your commander has that activate ability, then your commander is an artifact, make sure you're considering this as well, because that reduction can really help you. And of course, yeah, just if you're in any kind of an artifact-based deck, this is going to be pretty crazy for you. So yeah, I think it's a very good card. Again, one that would be in Joyra if we ever talked about Joyra, because yeah, that's a deck I don't play anymore. Moving on, Case of the Neglected Feast. Oh, that is such a shame. So just left the feast there, you didn't need any of it. Enchantment Case for a single white mana. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under control, you gain 1 life. Already, that's a very, very, very good effect. Isn't it like there's like an Ajani's enchantment kind of thing, like Ajani's Presence or something like that, where it's like the exact same thing, I believe. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. Regardless, to solve, you gain 5 more life this turn. Very easy to do. Obviously, if you're utilizing this card, you have a life gain type strategy. You could probably literally solve this on turn 2 if you really wanted to. You're not going to want to do that, though. Solved, sacrifice this case, creature cards in your graveyard gain. You may cast this card from your graveyard until on turn. I guess I should say sacrificing is not what you want to do. I don't believe you'd have to sacrifice that on the same turn that you solve it. I think you just solved it. And then, yeah, I think you'd get to use that whenever you want. I could be wrong on that. Let me know in the comments below. Maybe you have to solve the same turn. Regardless, being able to just cast your creatures out of your graveyard until the end of the turn is a really good effect. Again, for a 1 mana enchantment that helps you gain life throughout the game, and then to be like, oh, okay, yeah, well, I guess I need some of those creatures back. Cool. Utilize this, get those back. And yeah, it's not like they come into play like with any kind of a counter or whatever, like any kind of effect that's like, yeah, at the end of the turn they leave, or yeah, if they leave the battlefield, they're gone forever. No. No finality counters here. They are sticking around. And yeah, it's a very, very, very good card. Next up, we've got Cease to Desist. We've got Instant for the Cease part. Exile 2 target cards from a single graveyard. Target player gains 2 life, draws a card. That's not bad. Right then and there, that's just not a bad effect at all. Graveyard hate is very, very important in many instances in a game of Commander. You'll be able to utilize this to get rid of 2 target cards from a graveyard. That can be very nice, and it replaces itself. That is the biggest part. I mean, I guess technically it might not. If you say, hey, player over there, you get to draw a card and gain 2 life, you're welcome. I mean, if you're playing like a politics deck, sure, but most of the time it's gonna be like, oh, no, I'm that player. I'll gain 2 life, I'll draw a card. Life gain is nice, but the important part is, again, this replaces itself. So it's not really a dead card, essentially. It's gonna replace itself in situations that you don't need it all that much. But also, because it's not a dead card, it has desist, draw artifacts, all enchantments for 6 mana in total. That is a bit expensive for its effect, but again, this comes on a split card, so again, it has that flexibility. And also, again, if you've got like a creature-based strategy, you're like, yeah, I don't really care about those, artifacts and enchantments. Let's just destroy all those. A good flexible card, flexible removal. And yeah, if you've got a deck that cares about high CMC, high mana value, yeah, I mean, collect evidence kind of things as well. Obviously, work with this too. But yeah, 8, that's quite a bit as well. Moving on. Urgent Necropsy. An instant for 2 black and a green. It's cost cast spell. Collect evidence X for the total amount of value of the permanents the spell's targets. Destroy to 1 target artifact, 1 target creature, 1 target enchantment, 1 target planeswalker. So this can get rid of quite a few things for you. Artifact, creature, enchantment, and planeswalker. I mean, planeswalker is probably the one that's like the least likely to benefit you with this because, I mean, yes, I mean, if playing against your friend's Super Friends deck, great. But if not, there aren't really too many planeswalkers that really see all that much play. There's a couple, but like, chances are there's probably not planeswalker in play. If there is, nice. Regardless, instant speed, 4 mana, get rid of potentially 4 things. That is huge. Most likely getting rid of at least 3. It does take some setup rate, obviously, because if you don't have anything in your graveyard, you can't really collect evidence, and then you can't really get rid of things. So again, this can be a really heavy hitter in situations that matter when you are set up properly. I mean, I guess the longer the game goes, the more likely this is to really take effect. That being said, if you just get Bajuka Bogged, and then you're like, oh, well, my removal is this, and I didn't have mana to cast it when I got Bajuka Bogged, and now, well, I'm in trouble. So yeah, make sure you're keeping that in mind. But yeah, for any kind of a deck that likes to play with the graveyard, any kind of a deck that's looking for a flexible removal spell, this can be very, very good. Next up, Deadly Cover Up. This is another card that had me saying, like, Wizards, what are you doing? Source for 5 mana. Just cost cast spell. You may collect evidence 6. So again, get rid of mana value 6 or greater out of your graveyard, essentially. Destroy all creatures. If evidence was collected, exile card from opponent's graveyard, then search its owner's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as that card. Exile them. Player shuffles draws a card for each card exiled from this way. Thank you to MTG Goldfish for the translated version of this. And I probably should have said that in the earlier cards as well. That being said, either there is a slight translation error or Wizards did not put non-land. Which typically they do because they don't want the scenario where you're like, oh, hey, cool, there's a forest in there. Oh, it's a mono green player playing that deck. Okay, let's get rid of all your forests. Because that could be potentially a scenario where that player, well, maybe this is it could be earlier in the game when you're casting this potentially, maybe turn 5. That player only has 5 lands to play, and then all of a sudden, you just got rid of their entire land base. All their lands are gone, and they're like, well, I guess I'll play my lower the ground spells. I don't know. Yeah, usually this says not land with these types of effects because they don't want you to be able to get rid of everyone's basic lands, essentially. So yeah, there's kind of going to be some weird scenarios potentially with this where, again, if that player drew discarded or like maybe it was milled or whatnot, or yeah, I mean, there are scenarios where someone destroys land with like a ghost quarter potentially. Yeah, this could be a pretty bad play for that player who is getting hosed on all their lands. Next up, Candlestick, artifact clue equipment for a single mana. Single blue mana, I should say. Equip creature gets +1, have whatever creature attacks, surveil 2, pay 2, sacrifice Candlestick, draw a card, equip 2. So it is technically a clue, so like all clues, you can sacrifice it. Have we seen these kind of like, correct me in the comments below on this, have we seen these kind of like clue equipment? I mean, have we seen like food, that kind of stuff too? Like additional, like, hey, the gingerbread man's also a food. It's interesting that when you see these kind of like, a melding of an artifact token and then also a actual card. This speed equipment is interesting. Surveil 2 is nice, especially for decks that, again, care about getting things in their graveyard, care about manipulating the top of their library, those kinds of things as well. And also, that's a little +1/+1's nice, but yeah, more importantly, when you don't need this anymore or you're desperate, you can sacrifice it to draw to replace it. It's a pretty interesting card. Next up, Cryptic. Speaking of an interesting card, this one's weird. For 2 mana, artifact, tap, collect evidence, 3, add 1 mana of any color, put an unlock counter on it. So this one is a mana rock, and we're starting to see more and more of these utility mana rocks lately. That being said, this is like a utility mana rock that, like, you might not be able to use. If you don't have anything in your graveyard, you can't use this for mana, which is interesting. That being said, sacrifice it, surveil 3, then draw 3 cards. Activate only has 5 more unlock counters on it. That's actually a very good effect. I mean, again, overall, this is what, 2 mana, and you at least have to collect evidence once with it. You could, obviously proliferate to get more counters on it, those kinds of things as well. It could take some time to actually get there, but again, when you surveil 3, draw 3, that's like basically get the best cards out of the top 6 potentially. So then, yeah, fill your grave if you need to. It's a very interesting effect, and again, it's one that's like, yeah, I mean, again, for your... Actually, I made a mistake already here with the comes to the utility artifacts as well. This one, usually when you're like, okay, it's a utility artifact, that is a mana rock. It costs 3 and it taps for 1. This one does cost 2 and tap for 1. So again, it is very efficient, but again, it has the potential to not let you utilize it for a mana. So it could be pretty useless. That being said, it is interesting. It's very interesting design. Again, seeing them play with utility artifacts, utility mana rocks at 3, now seeing that down to 2, but again, with a restriction... Yeah, I mean, again, if you've got a deck that self-mills, you're going to love this kind of a card because you're like, oh, okay, cool, as long as you don't care what's in your graveyard. Being able to utilize this as a great early low-to-the-ground mana rock that also can help you get me more things in the graveyard and also draw cards for just 2 mana. Yeah, that can be a good amount of value for you. Can definitely not for every deck out there, though. Moving on, Lost in the Maze, enchantment for X blue, flash, enters the battlefield, tap X target creatures, put a stun counter on each of those creatures you don't control. Type creature control of hexproof. This is a very interesting, flexible card where it can be like a temporary removal spell in a way. It can be a way to protect your creatures out of nowhere, essentially, and it can also just be a good effect to be like, oh, okay, cool. I've got a lot of creatures that have tap abilities in my deck. Maybe my commander does as well, like a Garth commander, essentially. And being like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll just tap my creature to give it hexproof, essentially, to get it out of the way of whatever removal spell you're going to be utilizing on it. So yeah, this is pretty flexible. Obviously, can play well into proliferate type strategies. They're like, okay, I'll tap down those creatures. I'll get stun counters on them. I'll proliferate those. Can also work with commanders like Hilda that also really care about, tapping down creatures and that kind of stuff, and getting benefits from that. So it's a very, very interesting effect. Enchantress decks can also consider as well. Obviously, it is a good enchantment. Next up, Hunted Bone Brute, a 6/2 skeleton beast with menace for just 3 mana, so that's a lot of power for just 3 mana. That being said, when it enters the battlefield, target opponent creates 2 1/1 white dog creature tokens. When it dies, each opponent loses 3 life. You could also disguise it so you're not giving your opponent that ETB, so that's nice there too. That being said, yeah, I mean, there are certain decks out that actually care about giving your opponent's creatures, or, being able to give them, more and more permanence. You can make deals. You can also, punish players for getting things to, like, a group slug type strategy. It's a very interesting one. Not sure exactly which play it's going to see in Commander, though. Next up, Treasurous Greed. One that is pretty spicy. Instant for a 3 mana in Orzhov. As this will cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature that dealt damage this turn. That is really interesting. I don't know if we've seen that before, really, with that kind of a restriction. So it is a big restriction because, number one, you need to either get your creature through on someone or they need to survive in combat most of the time. There are certain creatures like, okay, like if you have a Tim that's like, tap, deal a damage. Okay, it doesn't specify combat damage, right? So keep that in mind. That being said, most of the time it's going to be like, yeah, okay, I swung, I got through this creature. Now I've got to commit to getting rid of that. When I do, though, draw 3 cards, each one loses 3 life, you gain 3 life. That's a pretty hefty amount of value for you. Getting 3 cards for 3 mana. Usually don't see that except for, oh gosh, what is that one where it's like you pay the different colors of mana, it's in black, pay different 3 uncovers mana, you draw 3, lose 3, whatever that one is. Goodness gracious, let me know in the comments below. I'm slipping up on it right now. Usually it's like, okay, you draw 3, you lose 3 for 3 mana. This is instant speed, draw 3, gain 3, drain 3. That is very good. Again, the cost of a creature. So again, there are going to be certain times when you don't get to actually utilize this when you want to. It is an instant. Again, most of the times you're going to use it is probably on your turn, though, because you've got a sacrifice creature that'll damage this turn. And unless you can, guarantee that an opponent's going to be swinging at you and then you can block, maybe you can make a deal. I mean, if you're in a desperate situation, you're like, hey, I've got this card. We need to get a Wrath. I don't have one in my hand right now. I can potentially draw into it. Swing at me. I'll block with a creature. It'll survive. Sorry, I'm taking your creature out, but we need to do this. So it is a very interesting card. I like the design of this one, and the art is really cool. Next up, Undergrowth Recon, enchantment for 1 green. Goodness gracious. Beginning of your upkeep, return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Thank goodness Wizards put tapped on this. It still might not matter, though, because this is potentially just like a free rampant growth every single turn in a way. I mean, especially if you have certain kinds of lands. Like if you've got those new Capana, if I could talk, fetch lands, and you just get those out of your graveyard again and again and again and again. Again, comes into play, sacrifice it, go get a basic. Comes into play, sacrifice it, go get a basic. Again and again and again every single turn. Again, the reason why this is good that it says tap, though, is because, just with Evolving Wilds, this would work, essentially. Every turn, enter the battlefield, tap, sacrifice it, go get a basic. It does come to play tap, so there's a bit of a delay on that, which is very, very needed. That being said, it's still an absurd amount of value. And of course, any kind of a self-mill strategy can just basically guarantee they're getting things. Draw discard decks, essentially, ways to tutor things in your graveyard potentially. But yeah, even just at a very simple level, hey, get lands in your graveyard by just sacrificing fetch lands. Yeah, that's going to do it. Again, especially New Capenna. Pretty absurd. So landfall decks are going to love that. Self-mill decks potentially as well. Lots of kinds of decks consider this crazy good card. Next up, Chrysler Crimson Pulse. Enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw 2 cards. So already it's a bit overcosted for that, right? Again, usually you can see that for 2 mana essentially in most circumstances, even instant speed. That being said, to solve, you have no cards in hand. So once you got no cards in hand, congratulations, it is solved. At the beginning of your upkeep, discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely not for every kind of deck out there, because there are certain decks out there that are be like, yeah, I'd love to discard my hand and draw some cards. There's other kinds of decks like, oh gosh, no, what am I? This is chaotic. I don't know what I'm drawing into. I don't know what my plan's going to be. If you are the kind of deck that though really can take advantage of discarding cards and also drawing cards, this can definitely come in handy for you. Otherwise, there's better ways to do this. Moving on. Presumed Dead. We are getting more and more and more of these Feign Death type of cards. This is yet another one, instant though, for 2 mana. Typically we see those at 1. The Wizards might be like, oh, let's hold up. These are too good, at 1 mana. Anyways, until a turn target creature gets +/+0 and gains when this creature dies during the battlefield under its control and suspect it. So again, spec means that it has menace and can't block. Now, obviously, there's a downside that it can't block. There's an upside that it does have menace, though. So yeah, that can definitely help you out and come to, oh yeah, hey, I'm gonna swing through. That's a good conclusion. Just, hey, I'm gonna swing at you, get more aggressive with this creature. Regardless, it is a great way to take advantage of death triggers, ETB triggers with certain kinds of strategies that might want to even sacrifice their own creatures and be like, yeah, let's come right back. Those Feign Death type effects can be very, very good again. For one that does cost 1 more, I'd say there are better options than this one, but still, it's nice to see yet another one out there. And then finally, the last one we're talking about, and we're going to talk about some cards that work well with it, our legendary creature talk about Archon Detective, Ezrim Agency Chief, a 5/5 with flying that costs 5 mana and Azorius with a very specific mana cost, 1 white, white, blue, blue, enters the battlefield, investigate twice, pay 1, sacrifice an artifact, gains your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, Hexproof until end of turn. Interesting that they give Hexproof again. I mean, it's not... They haven't really lately given like just hexproof on a creature. This one does have a cost to it, obviously, but they've switched over to like ward for everything these days, and they just slap ward on everything. So it's interesting they went with that, but still, this is an interesting card where it's like, yeah, you get 2 clues in this ETBs. It kind of reminds me of that one commander that's in Esper ETBs, and then there's the voting, and you're most likely getting a lot of clues in like 1 treasure. That being Tivit, Silver Secrets. There we go. That being said, still a good amount of value again to investigate twice. Not the most value though when it comes to like what kind of, artifact token you could get. Obviously treasures would be better, but you aren't Azorius. Interesting. It's very interesting, and there's definitely ways that you can play with the amount of artifacts that you're getting. You can play with the artifacts you're getting in play. You're also, again, it's good that it can protect itself, obviously, give Vigilance, Lifelink, Hexproof. And also with what you're probably going to want to do with this is, again, that is a good ETB. Using and abusing the ETB is very easy in these colors. You've got the access to the most blink spells with these 2 colors. So your opponents are really going to have a hard time dealing with this because, again, they have to dedicate actual removal to this to try to get rid of it. When they do that, obviously, you can be like, oh, okay, cool. I got 1 mana open. Got a clue. I'll sacrifice it. Cool. Hexproof. Not touching my commander this turn. Thank you. But also, again, even with a board wipe, you probably have, blink effects that can just delay blink, essentially. Or, blink effects, that can avoid other kinds of removal. So this can be pretty hard to deal with. So, yeah, it's interesting with the amount of step. We'll talk about some cards that work really well with it. I don't mean to downplay it, but, like, I think we got other commanders so far that, like, can do this but more. But also, again, with this set we have seen, here's the thing. We are getting more and more kind of clue support. And again, that very first card we talked about in combination with this is just crazy good if you've got like an artifact synergy deck and things you can sacrifice for artifacts. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about cards that work well with it with the budget buys and price your picks. So first up, we've got Shimmer Dragon, which is a crazy good card. I'm glad they keep reprinting it. A 5/6 dragon with flying for 6 mana. As long as you draw 4 more artifacts that has hexproof, you're probably going to get there with a commander like this that can make 2 artifacts at a time on ETB. Tap 2 untap artifacts you control, draw a card. So yeah, again, clues. They're nice. Hey, you can pay 2 mana to sacrifice them, draw a card. What's nicer? Using them just repeatedly over and over again for free, essentially tapping 2 of them to draw a card. This can be crazy effective, this kind of card, especially one that can protect itself. Next up, Inspiring Statuary, yet another way to use and abuse artifact tokens. Non-artifact spells you cast have improvise, meaning that your artifacts can help tap for mana for them, essentially, colorless mana. So yeah, even if your commander is dealt with, you can keep getting it back again and again and again. Your other big spells you can get out. Yeah, this can actually just help you a lot throughout the game, again, especially if you can keep getting more and more of those clue tokens in play. Speed of clue tokens, take advantage of them with Thought Reflection. Again, 2 mana to draw a single card. Not all that great. That being said, 2 mana to draw 2 cards, lovely. Enchantment for 7 mana. If you draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. This can help out a lot. A very, very good card with a commander that can give you repeatable card advantage. Next up, speaking of that, Trail of Evidence. Whenever you cast in sorcery spell, Investigate. Again, it's going to make a clue. Being able to fill the board with even more clues can be very good, especially when you have even more clue synergies like we talked about earlier. And also, again, yeah, you're going to have good amounts of instant sorceries in this deck. If you are building around that ETB, you've got ways to blink it. You've got ways to take advantage of that ETB. Speaking of which, Cloud Shift. Yeah, very easy, very effective. A single mana, blink a creature. So yeah, just blink your commander. It's a good way to avoid a removal spell as well. And then also, of course, just, yeah, 1 mana basically make 2 clues. What's not to love about that? Or how about a free one, Soul Herder? Every single turn you are blinking. Every single one of your turns, I should say. Our creatures exile from the battlefield, get a counter on this. That's nice, not really all that necessary. Give your end step, you may exile target creature control, then return to the battlefield under its own control. Basically, hey, you know that ETB that you got over there? Get it again for free. So you only get 2 clues every single one of the times that this happens. It can be quite nice. Also, if you've got other ETBs to take advantage of, maybe just turn this into like a blink commander strategy, essentially. Lae'zel's Acrobatics, instant for 4 mana. Exile non-token creature control, then roll a d20. 1 through 9, basically, you blink them once. It's a delayed blink. They'll come back at the end of the turn. And if you roll it twice, if you get a 10 through 20, if you get a higher number, you basically do that twice. Again, getting double the ETB. So again, 4 clues if you hit that. And of course, other ETBs from other creatures. Like if you got like a Moldrifter, that can be quite nice as well. Moving on, Astrid Path. I don't know why I messed up on that, but I did. A 2/2 ETBs or text create a food tokens to get another way to create artifact tokens. Again, another way to take advantage of that with like a Shimmer Dragon or the number of artifacts in play, etc. kind of cards. On top of that, when you sacrifice a clue or food, it explores. So again, this takes advantage of both clues and food, which is very nice. And yeah, being able to sacrifice those, being able to take advantage out of exploring again, getting a card at the top of your library in your hand if it's a land, or putting your graveyard if you don't want it. Also getting counters on this. Sure, that can really help you out quite a bit. Speaking of helping out though, Spine of Ishsa. Taking advantage of artifacts that actually want to be sacrificed can be huge. Again, just paying a single mana lets you do that with commander and you get an extra benefit. Enters the battlefield, destroy target permanent. Lovely. On top of that, when it's with grave from the battlefield, bounce it back to its owner's hand. So essentially, yeah, just pay a single mana to bounce it back to your hand so you can use it again for another rule spell. That can be quite nice. But now the pricier picks is where things get really crazy. Yeah, Clan Ironworks. This card's $30 for a reason. Sacrifice an artifact, add 2 to your mana pool. Basically, your commander becomes a value engine that you could still, I guess, draw some cards with if you really want to with those clues. But also, it's just like, okay, my commander ETBs. I get 4 mana. Yep. And of course, there's ways to make this even grosser. I mean, Away Procession. Now, instead of getting 2 clues, I get 4 clues every single time this ETBs. And yeah, if I've got Clan Ironworks in play, then therefore I get 8 mana every single time my commander ETBs. And with that, Eldrazi Displacer. Yeah, hey, let's just utilize that mana. You don't even need that doubler to actually get there. And then just blink my commander again and again and again. 2 in a colorless exile a creature, return to the battlefield under its control. This basically, plus Clan Ironworks, is just infinite mana with this commander. So yeah, you could go in that direction if you really wanted to. Obviously, Deadeye Navigator can help you as well, not going infinite in that way. This one's Soulbound. When Soulbound paired with another creature, you get to pay 1 in a blue to basically blink that creature or the Deadeye Navigator. Yeah, a very easy way to get a ton of clues off of our commander. With those clues, you can also utilize Urza, Lord High Artificer, a crazy good commander in its own right, but also great in the 99 of an artifact-based strategy. Enters the battlefield, make a 0/0 construct that become quite massive based on the artifacts in play. You can tap an artifact you control to add blue, and then also pay mana into that to shuffle your library, cast something free off the top, essentially. But yeah, the important part here is this turns every single one of your artifacts into mana rocks, including tokens too. So yeah, those clues you're making are now just 2 mana rocks every single time your commander ETBs. Tap them for mana, do some absolutely crazy things. So I guess that would combo with Deadeye Navigator. There you go. And then also Teferi's Ageless Insight. Yeah, I already talked about Thought Reflection. Of course, this works even better in certain circumstances. I mean, better in the fact that it costs 3 less. It doesn't double up your first card draw on, your turn, essentially. That being said, doubles up every other one. So yeah, being able to sacrifice a clue, again, even if it's 2 mana, drawing 2 versus 1 is huge. If you got Forensic Engineer in play again, hey, congratulations. You pay 1 to draw 2. That's even crazier. But now as this episode is coming to a close, let me know what your thoughts are on it in the comments below. What is your favorite new card that I brought up on this episode? What is your favorite new card from this set in general? What do you think about this brand new commander? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you're staying tuned to this channel for even more exciting quick takes and spoilers coming out. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.